Thank you, Jennifer. As Jennifer says, we've had Dessa in our new sound studio upstairs in the building here. Not too long ago, November 13th, we aired a conversation with Dessa specifically about her new album called Sound the Bells, which is an amazing collaboration with the Minnesota Orchestra. We'll have a chance to talk with her a bit about that tonight. And what you're about to hear in this performance with the Argus Quartet is sort of like a spin-off of the Sound the Bells project, and incorporates a couple of songs that are on the record and one that is not. We'll also have a chance to maybe delve into a little bit of the process of how these songs have been transformed from their original version into something approaching orchestral music, or in tonight's case, chamber music. So all of that is still to come. And Dessa has brought with her two other vocalists, Matthew Santos and Aviva J. So please welcome all of them to the stage. Here is Dessa.
Good morning. Thanks for coming. Thanks, John. I figured we'd start with a couple songs, yeah? Got snow in my pockets, went down again head first. Lays drill bits to my point shoes, pirouette through the hardwood to pay dirt. Night falls, day breaks, time is a funny kind of violence, and I'm trying to keep in mind it can't leave you the way it finds you. Good grief, I've heard people say it, what a phrase, what a state to be in, but I don't know where they go to get that feeling. My knees stay clean, not much for praying. Do my own stunts and my own saving, but there's something amiss, something I've been missing. Maybe good grief, how can you tell it from the bed? Maybe it's only in effect. Good grief's the one that's in your past. They say there's good grief, but how can you tell it from the bed? Maybe it's only in effect. Good grief's the one that's in your past. This time my best wasn't good enough. Well, fuck, usually it is. And the air got a little rough, took off the fuselage and engine and both wings, but I'm ready to work for this. Just show me what to dig. I'm ready to hurt for this. I know exactly what this is. I want that good grief, the one that heals me, that leaves me clarified by fire when I'm burned clean, tempered by light and heat. On the dead of morning, I'll be beautified and then fortified. I'll rise, bust the hydrant, let it spray champagne. Wings are broken, but I feel no pain. It's real today. I know this feeling. Let it rain. They say there's good grief. How can you tell it from the bed? Maybe it's only in effect. Good grief's the one that's in your past. They say there's good grief. How can you tell it from the bed? Maybe it's only in effect. Good grief's the one that's in your past. Secrets don't like to be kept on mine. Jumped over the fence, I guess I should be upset, but I'm in my nightgown on the lawn, thinking better that they're gone. I've been afraid of this so long. It's a relief when it goes wrong. cast me, burn me clean, like glass from sandy ground. I'm here now, and asking melt me down. Recast me, burn me clean, like glass from sandy ground. Good grief, burn me clean. Good grief, maybe it's just the wind. Maybe it's just the wine. Maybe it's just the words that's in your past. Good grief, how can you tell it from the bad? Maybe it's only in the fact. Good grief's the one that's in, the one that's in the past.
Oh, yes. As a performer, there's a very satisfying moment. I'm going to touch you. There is a very satisfying moment when you can tell that someone convinced someone else to come to this. Do you know what I'm saying? And it's after the first song, they go, I saw you do. I'm sorry, I didn't quite catch that. Let's jump into another one. Yeah, this song is called Jump Rope.
Girls on the block turn rope, calling out the same games that I played. It goes turn around and jump, touch the ground and jump. Wake up to phone work and look for love, but when that rope comes round, you jump. That rope comes round, you jump, 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 jump. You sterilize the needle with a lighter and a prayer. Sew your empty pockets closed, cut off all your hair. You train up on the mountaintop to weaponize the blood. You bring your body back to sea level to see what body does. And it runs, and it runs, and it runs. It was just jump rope then. You try not to get hit, you try to stay in, don't let them talk that down. Still jump rope now. It was just jump rope then. Try not to get hit, you try to stay in, don't let them talk that down. It's still jump rope now. You hope you get the fast toy, some of what you asked for. Never let a broken heart keep you from the dance floor. Have a little fun. Have a little fun, fun, fun. Girls on the block turn rope, calling out the same games. Turn around, touch the ground. Wake up to find work and look for love, but when that rope comes around, that rope comes down, you jump, 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 jump. It's just jump rope then. You try not to get hit, you try to stay in, don't let them talk that down. It's still jump rope now. It was just jump rope then. Try not to get hit, you try to stay in, don't let them talk that down. It's still jump rope now. Cause that rope comes around. that rope comes around, then you jump, that rope comes around, then you jump, that rope comes around, then you jump, it was just jump rope then, you try not to get it, you try to stay in, don't let them talk that down, it's still jump rope now. Hey. Will you please help me thank Aviva J. and Matthew Santos? And of course, the Argus Quartet.
And of course, Dessa. So Dessa, some of these songs have now been through multiple iterations. You know, original versions, there's a whole album of remixes, the orchestral record, now string quartet. What does the writing process start with for you? Does it start with lyrics? Does it start with a beat? How does that happen?
Yeah, so it's evolved a little bit over the years, but at the very beginning, I joined a crew called Doomtree, right? Oh, this is delightful. I'm really having fun. There's this crew in Minneapolis, Minnesota called Doomtree. They invited me in, and primarily, exclusively actually, as a rapper. So I didn't have any like musician duties, if that makes sense. I wasn't making beats or playing anything. And the way that it worked then was like you essentially get like a CDR, like a burned CD at that point. That Laserbeak had titled like Bangers. And then, this is the tricky part, that there are probably 4 of those being circulated in the rap crew, so you have to listen as fast as you can to call dibs. Yeah, okay. So that was how it started, and then over the years, knowing that I also have like an interest in singing, and I love harmonies, and I love strings. Sometimes I would try to sit at a piano and just sort of like bang out, even just like 6 fingers, like E.T. Even with just 6 fingers, like see if there's like a progression that I would like, and I'd record that even if it was super badly, to then share with a musician with chops to arrange.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, it's interesting you mentioned harmony. I mean, Matthew was on the record with the Minnesota Orchestra, and watching Aviva and you and Matthew, there were moments where I thought he had the highest voice of the 3 of you.
That was true. Yeah.
But you don't read music and write music, right?
I don't. Like I wish I had a this is a PowerPoint advanced clicker. But we're going to pretend it's an iPhone. So when I sometimes like sit at the piano to try to record like a little snippet, to write lyrics over, I don't read music. And so I'll hold my iPhone between my chin and my suprasternal notch, and I'll just record where my hands are, because else I can't remember, like, was it the 3 black keys or the 2 black keys where the hands go down? So I should probably learn to read music. but yeah, I don't. And most of I shouldn't say all, but like most of the singers who I work with don't. Aviva does, I just learned, and I'm really excited because she'll be able to help liaise. But most of the vocalists who are on the record don't read. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Well, I mean,
do you read?
Not enough to affect my playing.
What a complicated answer.
Yeah, okay. That's an old jazz. It's an old jazz musician's joke.
Sorry.
Can you read music? Yeah, not enough to affect my playing.
I gotcha. Okay.
Yeah. Jazz jokes, people. Yes. Yeah. The thing is, though, there's such a great long tradition of harmony being done by ear, and
100%, yeah.
But it's not something we associate with rap.
Right. Unless you're like into Bone Thugs or something. Yeah. Whoa, didn't go over well in this one. Yeah.
Young audience are like, who? Bone what?
Jazz what? Yeah, you're right. It's usually not a tradition rap. Although I'd be interested to know what you think about this. I think a lot of times people will say there's no melody in rap.
That is...
Wow.
Boo,
those men.
Yeah.
No, I don't mean to be indignant about it. I just mean you can hear right away if you were to like pull a rap verse from one song, just the acapella, and put it over another beat, let's say in another key, you realize how much, even if it's small, how much melody there is, because it would sound so wonky. Like you are hitting notes. Melody isn't at the fore, but anytime, even just speaking, right?
Yeah.
We're hitting notes. And so.
Well, a couple of things. Harry Partch, the 20th century American composer, instrument inventor, one-time hobo, invented a 42-note to the octave scale so that he could approximate the language, the inflection of American English speech. So that when his pieces are intoned, they sound like speech, even though it's all like very precisely notated and pitched.
Yeah, we were even backstage, and the quartet, we just met, and they were goofing off, and I know. That's why I gotta learn how to read music. The fact they can do that, oh man. But they were talking about whatever gigs they got coming up, and sorry to call you out, but one of them was like, really? And I was like, we always do that the same way. Really? Like we could notate that. There's so much music just in speech, let alone in hip hop. I feel like a lot of times you're hitting the same ba 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 ba, but there's like a definite melodic and metric component.
Well, and there's this thriving London jazz scene where it's young musicians, many of them of Caribbean or West African descent, and so they're using hip hop and electronic music and stuff like that. And one of the leaders of this scene is a guy named Shabaka Hutchings, who's an amazing sax player, and he told me that he practices to Nas songs where he just plays along with Nas.
The lyric, though?
With the lyric.
Holy cow. Wow.
Because there is melodic material there.
That's so interesting, because every once in a while, like, if I hear, I'm not an expert by any means, and I'm sitting with an expert on music, but I really like a lot of the rhythms in like bachata or, like a lot of dance rhythms, Latin dance rhythms. And every once in a while, like if you hear a clavier, like that dang, 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 that kind of feel, it makes me think like, okay, how can I do a rap beat? How can I do a rap verse to match the percussive elements there? Because, I feel like rapping is as much, drumming is not the right word, but it is a percussive art form, right? More than writing like a ballad or a folk song usually is. Phrasing is important in ballads and folk songs, but you really are a percussive instrument, I think, when you're rapping.
Although phrasing still is vitally important. I mean, we talk about flow, and what is that really?
But I almost think it's like so important. I see what you're saying, but so maybe I'm making a difference without a distinction, but I think that it's so important that it surpasses just being phrasing, and it becomes a percussive element in the composition itself.
Well, but in your writing, you do both. I mean, there are ballads. I mean, this program is called Heart Strings with Dessa, and
there's a comma in it.
There's a comma. There's a comma between the two, but a lot of your songs are really about, things that have pulled on your heartstrings over the years. And, you were in residence here at the Greene Space about 2 years ago, and a lot of that was about heartbreak and the neuroscience and the psychology of heartbreak and stuff. So that's we don't think of that stuff usually as the province of rap. That's more the province of the songwriter and the balladeer. And so how do you walk that line?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. Some of this isn't empirically based and is just conjecture, so I'll start that way. But I think in some way I've embraced that branding and sort of maybe like jokingly. Like, I remember a friend of mine listening to Drake and being like, "This isn't hard," like, and he was like, "This is soft as baby thighs." I loved that line. But if you think of maybe some Drake stuff, like obviously it's more, I mean, it is like more, there's more braggadocio, there's more, there's more like sex for sure, but there's a lot of like, you used to be a good girl and now you're out all night. You're out all night. That's Victorian. And I'm not saying I don't like it. I'm just saying that I wonder if it reads more with me because I'm like embracing it in a winking way. But like if you really slow some of that stuff down.
Yeah, I gotta say.
Dear Mama, a classic rap song called Dear Mama. Like,
even I am not old enough to say that to one of my daughters. You used to be a good girl, and that's a step beyond for me.
It's weird. Yeah.
So, but in terms of writing the songs, I mean, when you set out, do you know which direction you're going to go?
That's a good question. I mean,
I knew if I asked enough of them, one of them would work.
sorry, you must be. I can tell. I just hit a button. That's a good question. Yeah. Okay. Note to self: never say that again. I think in some ways it's determined by what's happening for me. It's determined by what's happening in my life. Like most of my stuff is nonfiction, so in some sense you are sort of, you're stapled to the cardboard backdrop of the events that are actually happening. So if your parents are really sick, or if you're going through a long breakup, that's gonna bubble up through the work because that's what's genuinely preoccupying your time. But on the other hand, like, I don't want to write an album that's only heartbreak songs, and I don't write those. Songs like 5 out of 6 or Fire Drills that are also, I'm aware of, like, wanting to balance an album as you would maybe a set, so that there's some like rugged, hard-hitting stuff, and that's tempered, by the softer true stories as well.
Well, you mentioned Doomtree, this wonderful collective that you're a part of in the Twin Cities, and when you mention what's going on in your life, I think of POS, who...
Me too.
Whose last album, how many times have you heard a rapper rap about kidney disease? But, he almost died, and that was, he was off the scene for about 5 years, and when he came back, it would have been ridiculous for him not to acknowledge kind of what he had been going through.
Yeah, I mean, I know that a lot of rap and a lot of any form, can be like super compelling fiction, can be pulp fiction. But I think for most of the people that I roll with, there is a true to life, element that's attractive. That's why I dug the Doomtree dudes. I was like, these guys are weird and they spirited in a way that doesn't look put on. I think we can smell bullshit, and I didn't smell it on them. I was just like, these guys are legit, and I'm excited by that. So when he came back after 2 or 3 years out, he had almost died. He'd gotten a kidney transplant. Yeah, I think death was very much on his mind. I think he was also, in a very cool way on record, trying to figure out, like, okay, well, what does this mean? Like, do I have any changed understanding of, like, mortality or morality, or, like, he's a dad, so, like, I'm not a parent. Confronting one's mortality with a young kid has to be a very different ball game. Yeah. And so when he writes songs that are very simple, like, I'm freaking out over here, but also like some really, he referenced Schrodinger's cat in Superposition.
Right.
It's like an 8-minute quantum song about kidney failure.
About quantum physics, yes.
That's not too many cars in that lane.
Right.
That's his. Yeah.
And he even had kind of trouble explaining what superposition meant, because
but so do physicists.
So do physicists.
Okay.
The idea that a thing can be in two places at the same time. But again, as a metaphor, it kind of works for you because, you're a singer and a rapper, you're a writer and a musician, and, those things kind of, they sort of bleed into each other. It's
Yeah. And I think the way that we're all used to seeing, all of us, like the way that we're used to seeing artists and public figures and cultural artifacts marketed is we keep like our lanes super clean, but none of us actually live that way. So if you meet a friend who's like really into softball, and then later you find out they're also into whatever House of Cards when that was not broken yet. You're not like, wait a minute, I thought you were the softball guy, Marty. Like you can have a multitude of interests, and I think we all live that way, but we don't present ourselves that way. And maybe that's because there's when funders are pushing stuff, one basket, all eggs, you really gotta commit. But I don't know. I'd like to believe that as consumers and as fellow human beings, like, we give one another more leeway, and we understand each other to be more complex and complicated than this like single note thing. So.
Well, sociologists talk about great places, and most people have two great places.
No, I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, one is home, and the other is work, and so this other kind of thing that began to develop among sociologists in the middle of the 20th century was the idea of the third great place, that there should be a place where it's not home and it's not work, but you can be the softball guy or the House of Cards super fan or whatever. Do you have a third great place other than home and
work?
Dessa the musician?
I mean, when you were saying that, I think I was sort of self-pitying myself. I was like, I don't have any great places. Like, I live out of a suitcase and I work in a different spot every night. Yeah, I don't know. I think I'm doing the great place thing like a turtle does, you know, just like great places wherever I'm sleeping. I don't know.
I'll allow it.
Thanks. I do feel like, I mean, every job ups and downs. This one, I feel so excited and privileged before that word had so many connotations to like run around after my curiosity and my enthusiasm. Man, I just think of all the other lives I could have had where I have the same brain, but I can't do this because I've got 3 kids, you know, by the time I'm real young, right? Because there's just not the money to like run off and learn how to sing and see if you can do it. You know, same brain, but I wouldn't have had the chance to try living in a different place in a different time. So that's the great part, but it does feel kind of like one thing. And maybe that's what's worked in my early life, and I'll kind of separate that into several great places. But for me, work, socialization, hobbies, food, sleep, like it's all kind of part of the same Play-Doh bowl.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. And so writing, songwriting, you know, you've written essays, and all part of the same creative impulse?
It feels like that. Yeah, I mean, you can't do them all at the same time, and they serve different purposes. But in the same way that, like, breakfast, lunch, and dinner all happen in the service of hunger in different contexts, it feels like a lot of the language art disciplines that I do function similarly.
All right. Well, now let's talk
That was a good metaphor. Let's just take a moment. That one worked. Okay.
Did you have that in your back pocket?
I just made that one up. That's why I was excited right now.
All right. So you're writing a song right here in front of us. So let's talk specifically about this project, where you've taken these songs, however they began, with lyrics or beats or CDRs that you got to before the rest of the gang did, and have sort of had to reverse engineer them to exist in a purely acoustic world. What was that process like?
It's a good question. And also, like, don't say that again. But also just like, I wonder if everyone, do we all know what we mean when we say purely acoustic? That it's like, there's no, every sound is being generated on stage, right? As opposed to an environment. Like when I play a keyboard, right? I'm relying on kind of a pre-recorded sound bank. Okay, just making sure. Ready?
Right.
Okay. I brought a couple of photos. So the way that an orchestral song's really, wow, a slide, Dessa. Come on, man. I got a laptop. Don't front like that. Very often the way that a song's life would transition from being a studio rap song into an orchestral piece. It would begin in the basement in South Minneapolis of a guy named Andy Thompson. He's the guy who orchestrated the record. This is my vantage point when he is working. He's very like imposing God dude with his back to you. So he's kind of working away. And
did he do these arrangements, the string quartet arrangements?
God, he's good. He's a boss in real life. He's really good. So he did. He did these reductions as well. So he listens to the studio version. Sometimes he's had a hand in that. And then he comes up with the idea of how to kind of like boil that all down. So he removes the idea of like having an electronic band on stage and adding an orchestra. We knew we didn't want to do that. We wanted to tear the thing down and rebuild with the bricks. So he makes an orchestral score. I can't read that, obviously, but I can read the words in the upper left-hand corner, and that's why I'm showing you this. I was very excited to learn that on orchestral scores, you can do what's called like tempo markings or performance directions, where you can write just like a few words.
Allegro non troppo, for example.
For example.
Yeah.
Okay, so allegro, that's walking speed, but hold on, slow that down. Allegro, that's walking speed. I don't know what non troppo means.
Non troppo, not too much.
Not too much. I'm working on it.
So allegro, fast but not too fast.
Okay.
Andante.
I have no idea what
Largo,
you're feeling.
lento.
Okay, I'm going to start talking. If we can just cut his mic, that would be great. But in my world, I was just like, you know, you don't have the luxury of like sitting down with every collaborator to have a heart-to-heart, because in an orchestra, it's this huge environment. So I like the idea of being able to sneak in a couple notes in that part of the score. So here, for the song Jump Rope, which we just played, the note is, we're just kids with jobs, man. I think in the tune Fighting Fish, the note was unfuckwithable. Yeah, I think for half of you, it was Candy Hearts and existentialism. But it was fun. I loved that part. It's just like, that's my entire contribution to the orchestral score. So Andy would make these, and then he would do what's called a MIDI mock-up. So, you know, you don't really have the luxury of like sitting down with an orchestra to audition the piece, you know? So he has like it's like little robots, like, they sound horrible, but you can at least get the vibe for like what the thing would sound like. Now, because I don't read music, and Abby Wolf, who's the vocal director who did a lot of the harmonies, she doesn't read music. We've worked together for a long time. So usually when we're singing, like, if you were Abby and I'm me, very often we'll indicate like who's going to go high by just moving our hands. You know what I mean? Like, I'm my right hand, so I'm going to go low. If you could take the high note, fantastic. I'm running out of breath, and I can indicate that with my eyes. So then she'll stop singing before we get to the end of the note, so that not one of us is just out there in the world alone. So she's made her own notation that she can understand to read about exactly what kind of intervals, you know, people are moving in and out of.
It's almost like shape notes, you know?
Yeah.
Where it's kind of the contour of the line without worrying about what the specific notes are.
Yeah.
Interesting.
And it's interesting, too, because I feel like there's so many, in my head, like, this is both a compliment and maybe a slight criticism, but it's like, musical notation in the Western world, to me, still looks certified smart when I see it on a page. It looks fancy in the same way that when you see, like, calculus notated, you know? Yeah. Like, that Good Will Hunting, you don't need to be told that's fancy. That looks fancy. And there's so many ways to get the job done. You know what I mean? Like, there's so many notations that you could use. There's so many, like, movement systems, stuff that people have created, too. It's a reminder to me.
Do folks know what shape note songs are? That like old Southern, well, actually started in New England, but old Southern kind of hymn tunes that were written with diamonds, triangles, circles, and squares. That's it. So, you know, anybody could read this stuff. The point was, you didn't have to be, you know, a super musical genius to be able to join the chorus.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, just the idea that you could make music, you know, with your community.
Yeah, with community, to be able to transmit ideas, right?
Yeah.
Even just like do, re, re, fi, you know what I mean? When people use do, re, mi to talk about notes too, there's so many ways to like transmit that idea that it makes me, I don't know, less intimidated maybe a little bit. And then there's that moment when you get on the stage with a full orchestra. In our case, it was well over 70 people. Man, real different than, you know, Doomtree in a van. Really different.
All right, now what was that like? First time on stage with 72 musicians behind you and a conductor in front of you. What did that feel like?
Oh man, I've never skydove. Is that the past? Skydived.
It's nothing I would ever do, so I don't concern myself with what the past tense is.
Just the physical.
I will never have skydiven.
I liked that. The amount of adrenaline, it's it sucks a little bit. I mean, it's just overwhelming, like the amount of being, you know, you're just nervous. It's high stakes, and it's not the case that you get to practice for a bunch of times. You know, it's like you get on stage with the orchestra, 1, if you're lucky, day before your gig, 2, if you're exceptionally lucky, but usually they just practice it through once, you know? So I think for me, some of the excitement, but also some of the challenge was like, the music's coming from the wrong direction, man. You know, it's all behind you. And for all of our careers as pop musicians, you know, these speakers that are on the front of the stage, there's so we can hear, right? You guys are hearing music from speakers that are mounted on the ceilings usually. So we've got some at our feet so we can hear too. But I was like, my ears are facing the wrong way for this band. That, and then also in a way that I really like now, but in a way that took like some adjusting to, tempo, like, it's organic here. You know what I mean? Like you're kind of feeling it out together. And in the same way that if you're singing, you know, if there's a big part, like maybe you just kind of feel it a little extra and then you lock up again, you know, for the rap verses. That's exciting and it makes for good, honest performance. But I was very accustomed to like machine, unchanging tempos every night. Yeah.
What about volume?
Right. So we come from very different worlds that have a lot in common, but are really separate too, you know? So pop singers generally and rappers are going to want volume and generally orchestral players emphatically are not. And so to try to find like a musical balance, but also just like to be a good steward of one another's interests. Like, yo, what is the loudest that you can take it? You know what I mean? I'm going to promise not to go louder than that, but can you help me find that line where it's right at the limit of you feeling totally comfortable? And the Minnesota Orchestra was so cool with that. Same thing with lights. I want lights. I want fog. I want to do wire work if they'll let me, you know? Nah. But game to work it out. We did a great light show. They were so cool, and learning about like stand lights and what's, you know, generally in a lot of like classical performances, people want it sort of bright so you can see like a program, you know, whereas I want it like pitch dark so that you forget you have a body. So that's us. That's Matthew, who you met a little earlier on stage. That was the 5 of us singing and being kind of fancy, and we had a big room, you know. That's there's 2 balconies, I think. So it was like 2,000 people a pop for each one of the shows that we did. So there's that too, you know, how that affects even just like bodily movement in the same way maybe like television to Broadway. Like people move their bodies really differently when they have to be seen far away.
Well, they also use their voices differently.
You know even more about
from
this than I
TV to Broadway. What about you and the singers?
Mm-hmm. I mean, was it during Sinatra's time that like a microphone was called an electronic crutch? Yeah. I think so.
I don't know, but the microphone enabled crooning. You know,
totally.
Bing Crosby had no career without a microphone.
And if you think of like Elliott Smith, who I love, that guy, you couldn't hear him from 4 feet away without a microphone. But it was tight. You know, I really liked it.
Yeah.
So for us, we were definitely maneuvering in with mics. But I think one thing that was different is, you know, very infrequently is a rap album recorded live.
Right.
I don't know if it's ever been recorded live with an orchestra. And so the idea of how to move, for me, the idea of how to move my body in the service of 2 really different objectives, because I want to be an entertaining person. Even if you're super far away, I want to move enough, you know what I mean? That you can really see me running the stage and gesture big, but obviously that's going to jog the voice. So to try to figure out how to record live well, but also not put on a show that wasn't engaging, that took a lot of thinking and one night of very, very athletic crying to figure out. Yeah.
A couple of times now you've referred to this as, you know, rap songs being played by an orchestra, but a lot of them are not.
No, you're right. That's probably lazy shorthand. There's some rap, and there's a lot of, I would say, like hip hop songs, which, you know, sometimes you can have a sung lyric over hip hop production, right? And then some, you're right, to your point, are just straight up ballads.
Yeah. And so, who's driving the train?
Oh, you're good. So that's Sarah Hicks, who conducted the gig. Gosh, what an
I'm sorry, is that a woman?
Well, it's a gendered it's a sticklet that she's got. Yeah. No, yeah, so she's got the baton, she's driving the entire orchestra, and she's just like super energetic. And I was in meeting her, I was like, well, it's gonna be a different world. She's gonna be pretty reserved, and I'm gonna be the rap person. And when I met her, she was doing clap push-ups side stage. Ooh. She's so rad. Yeah, she's a great musician. She's become a good friend, and she's just fun to watch. You know what I mean? She's a performer, absolutely. Yeah.
But it is sad to say, still noteworthy to see a woman conducting.
100%. And so I think we both probably took we were both like, I like you doing your job. You don't have to say it more than that, but like, cool, nice to share the stage with you.
What's this?
So the dudes who actually are like producing the record in the ball cap, that's Laserbeak from Doomtree, and Andy Thompson, looking super thoughtful. Sarah Hicks with charts on her lap, and me with a glass of wine. And the intermission of these shows, we would get together to figure out, like, is there anything we should change? How are the tempos feeling? Everything feeling good? We capturing what we need? So the guys who are like doing the heavy lifting don't get to see the show because they have to sit for the entirety of the concert underneath a stairwell, like in a basement. We took every second, like down to 100th of a second of the time that we had to record this album to take it. And when we finally sung that last note and played them out, that was Laserbeak. Yeah. So
field goal. 3 points.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. So that was a rebuild of the songs. scaling up from 7-piece with tracks to 72 pieces with conductor and vocals. Now it's the reverse. It's scaled down, string quartet, 3 voices. How different does this feel?
It does feel different, but I feel like maybe that like I've become a more careful listener, even to just like today when we were practicing for the first time. Like, listen, could you play a Pitts note? Anybody? So sorry, I know I just threw this in, guys, in the tech team. Okay, so that's pizzicato versus an arco note. That's when you use when you use the bow. It's like listening more carefully to like those little, quieter pieces that I'm used to in rap songs to like make sure that we're all together. I think I've become a more active listener with my left ear. The right half of me is like rap song or just song, and left half is like dink. Okay, got it. We're still on. Dink.
All right, now the song you're going to do next is not on Sound the Bells, right?
That's true.
So this is presumably a new experience to do half of you in this.
We haven't done it too often. Yeah, I could count on one hand.
All right.
Yeah.
Should we bring the rest of the gang back out?
Let's do it. Will you guys help me welcome Matthew and Aviva again? Just help me thank like Ricardo and Jennifer and Gaines, the rest of the team who are doing this. So pro. So pro. All right, now like lightning. Just a little higher. Thanks, Ricardo. Awesome. That's funny.
They say that your heart is the size of your fist. I can tell you firsthand, I know how that glove fits. Takes your whole life just to teach you 2 tricks. It beats and it attacks, and in between is all of love and lost attraction. You live your life between contractions, and you and I would do just that. But what if I could cure me? Am I so sure which pill I choose? Maybe I'm happier with half of you than I'd be with clean but empty rooms. In a mess that's made of us, there's still so much to lose. The key I swallowed, the lock you picked, all these spinning bottles and I'm still the mark you missed. We should be a settled argument, but I can't do that. I can't remove the screws of my own youth. Can't just pull out all the fuses and start new. Can't erase, can't undo my past with you. And I know it's not the sort of thing you're supposed to show. If you can, you're supposed to try to let it go. You just shoulder what you can and soldier through. But what if I could cure me of you? Am I so sure which pill I choose? Maybe I'm happier with half of you than I'd be with clean but empty rooms. 'Cause in the mess it's made of us, there's still so much to lose. I get this feeling when I'm far away from home, that I don't know the girl I'd be if we left well enough alone. Well enough. But what is well enough alone? What if I could cure me of you? Am I so sure which pill I choose? choose. Maybe I'm happier with half of you than I'd be with clean but empty rooms. In the mess that's made of us, there's still so much to lose. Maybe I'm happier with half of you than I'd be with clean but empty rooms. In the mess that's made of us, there's still so much. There's still so much left to lose. Summertime, your walls to tired. But if they ask me, I ain't heard a thing. Back to the wall, back to the ball,
Back to the drawing board.
back to the wall, back to the ball,
Back to the drawing board.
back to the wall, back to the ball,
Back to the drawing board.
again. There was a snowstorm in Jackson when you and I met at a club called St. Sebastian's, but the sign said something different. I remember thinking that I didn't have a shot at Mississippi. Television told us which roads they were closing. There goes a rap show, and everybody knew you as the wife of a famous man. Everybody who knew said, there goes Dixon's girl again. Even the walls lean closer when she plays the piano real slow. Haven't met so many women in this business that I really like. But you can hold a little liquor, you can hold a conversation, you can hold your own mic. And even that night I learned the truth about your man. You gotta be big to treat pretty girls bad. It's not much, but my money's on you. It's not much, but my money's on you. It's not much, but my money. It's not much, but my money. It's not much, but my money's on you. Well, I heard from the rest of the world you're in trouble. Bad news moves like fire that you fight on the phone. Now, I'm too far away, my well-wishing can't touch you, but I think of you still more than you might suppose. Everybody wanna see you with your head down, wanna hear you hit the high note, wanna know if they can get you for a little less. Girl, I know how the songs can fly. Had some hard goodbyes, call me up day and night, free drinks and bad advice. And it's not much, but my money's on you. It's not much, but my money's on you. It's on you, it's on you. Yeah, my money's all my money, all my money, all my money, all my money's all my money, yeah, my money's on you. It's on you, it's on you.
So that is Dixon's Girl. And, Dessa, that's almost like that could be a short story, it seems like. It's a kind of a character study. And
It feels like it. I mean, their story songs are right. I feel like that one for me was like, that was a true story. Met a lady and changed a couple of details to make sure that I was preserving her, her privacy and stuff. But yeah, that it felt self-contained in that evening when I met her. Yeah.
Wow. So when you have this experience of performing these songs in such dramatically different ways, is there some level of surprise? At some point, do you think, holy crap, did I write that?
Oh, gosh. No, I mean, there is surprise, but I would say that it does not usually culminate in, oh my God, aren't I great? Yeah, like in the best possible way, I feel like I'm challenged because I've been able to ask collaborators who are really good to work with me. And then that puts you in a position to like, don't be the weakest link, you put this all together. And I feel really I feel confident to maybe the point of occasionally cocky after a couple of whiskeys about the writing part, Mm-hmm. But in many ways, like, I'm the cheapest singer that I can hire, so I get work all the time, and so learning how to like maneuver with people like the Argus Quartet and Abby and Matthew. I mean, y'all are really good. And I feel that, and so to be asked to match that level of performance does generate a lot of surprises. Even today, like listening to Aviva's voice, how she like does some of those melismas. Melismas are runs if you listen to pop music, there's a lot of notes. She does that more, and I'm like, ooh, that sounds cool. How do I play off that?
Yeah. How do you play off that?
I don't know, man.
Keep it simple. Have you started writing again since working with the orchestra and doing all this stuff?
Like
songwriting.
A little bit, yeah.
I'm just wondering if this has been if this changes your approach at all, having had this experience, if it's been at all transformative.
Yeah, I would say maybe in both ways. And
you were going to say that was an interesting question,
and then I didn't. Thank you. Oh, God.
By the way, we're setting up a couple of mics here, so you folks can ask some questions of Dessa in a moment. But
I would say it makes me want to understand the mechanics, learn a little bit of the theory, whereas like when I first started, I was like, you can't keep me down. And now I'm like, you are being kept down. You're holding your iPhone like beneath your chin and your sternum, like, notate. But on the other hand, to be totally frank, like this music is so patient not patient, it's so designed, and it takes so much virtuosic collaboration that I also want to make sure that, that like part of my career is just like, I don't know, it's just there's some songs that don't run on virtuosity. The song Outkast, like Hey Ya, that is not a masterful literary chorus, right? I still sing along. That's tight. Yeah, it's a good chorus. So I want to make sure that I'm kind of working in both fields. That's not good commercially, technically, but it feels good artistically. So,
all right.
Yeah.
So why don't we take some questions from you folks? Make your way to either of the microphones here, and we have a couple of minutes. We still have another song that you're going to do for us.
Yeah.
So let's start over here. Hi.
Hi. First of all, thank you. This is wonderful and amazing.
Thanks.
Second of all, because of your TED Talk and your work with neuroscience, how has that influenced your songwriting, or has it at all? I liked what you said earlier about us all being these really complex packages, and I feel like it has to have influenced it somewhere along that line.
Yeah, I mean, in some way, I feel like anything that I've been really fascinated by, like, it probably informs my worldview as a human being, and then who I am as a human being informs the songs I write. But because it is kind of complicated, that neuroscience stuff, I had gone through a really bad breakup, and then I'd assembled a team of neuroscientists to try to follow love.
And now there's a necklace of it.
I think you can buy a copy of the 3D printed caudate in the lobby. But I'm reluctant sometimes to try to do the 2-minute version of it because it does such a disservice to the science. And on some soapbox shit for a second, I had never imagined when I was a science nerd in high school and college that scientific rigor would become a politically radical act.
Yeah, really.
And it is now. And so I want to be careful that I'm not one of the people talking to fashion magazines very casually about how science works, because science is under attack. And I think it's really important to explain this is what peer review means, right? This is blah, blah, blah. So in short, though, I would say I think a lot about I've always been fascinated by free will. The more you learn about the brain and how the brain and the body work together, it's very trickier to find room to insert the ghost. So that's probably one of the themes I think most about.
Thank you.
Thanks for the question.
Let's go to this part of the room.
Hi. I think I saw my first Doomtree show in like 2010. And your first solo show, I don't remember the year, but it was at the Public, and it was one of your first shows at the Public. And it was very like cocktail dress. You were standing still. I didn't get sweaty. I wasn't jumping around. But it was sort of quieter and a little more. And so I'm wondering when did this idea plant? Like, when was the idea to do something a little more?
Do you know what chess boxing is?
No.
So it's like sometimes it's like people will sit down for a round of chess, and then a bell rings, and then they box, and then they have to sit down and play more chess. And I
You
feel
are making this up.
100% I'm not. And I feel like I'm interested in both, if that makes sense. Like, I want a cocktail dress. I don't want a lot of them, but I want 4 of them, you know? And then sometimes, very rarely, I want to wake up with blood on the pillowcase and not know why. You know what I mean? Like, that was a great show. What is going on? I like both worlds, if that makes sense. So I think even from joining Doomtree in the very beginning, I used to sing, but I told them, frankly, and the guys understood that I was like, I don't want to be the girl in the rap crew
Singing the hook.
who comes and sings the hooks. When I used to take stage, you know, and the first time we went to London, you know, people would think I was a fly girl. And then when I would start to rap, they're like, wow! And I got all this unearned praise because it was, I don't know. The expectations are so gendered, right? Mm-hmm. So I think I wanted to rap first before I started to sing because I wanted to prove that it was a decision. Yeah, so in the beginning, I would just say I probably suppressed that for the first few years to like earn my cred.
All right, let's back over here.
So you're one of my 2 favorite songwriters, but like the absolute truthfulness in your lyrics and you saying now that they're nonfiction. My other favorite is Tim Kasher, and he in his songs points out, oh, I'm getting flack for this from the people who know this song is about them. And like in your book and whatnot, do you get that from the subjects of your songs?
Yeah, so this is a great question. I think in some ways, although it can be dramatic and messy, you know, to date other artists, and I want to avoid the jokes, right? Like, I get there's a lot of punchlines to make there, but in real life, I think artists are fantastic, amazing, complicated people. And for the most part, I'm willing every once in a while to, you got too drunk, I'm gonna help you home. Or I got too drunk, and you're gonna help me home. But you're really interesting to talk to. You make enough money that you should never have a negative bank balance. And you sometimes do, right? Because your personality and your charisma is stronger than your home ec skills. And I'm willing to make those changes. Nobody's perfect, right? I like sparkly, fascinating, curious, sometimes troubled people. That said, I think I've been lucky in some ways that my biggest subject matter, you know, for a lot of the musicians that I've been close to as friends and as lovers, they get it. So when I say, here's a piece of art that might make you feel uncomfortable because it's very candid, that they look at that or listen to it and go, this does make me feel slightly uncomfortable, but I am more excited as an artist to have this be shared in the world. What a lucky place to be. And to be honest, I've been able to return that favor, you know, that when someone played a song about knifing me in the neck, I was like, this is a song that I don't need to hear again for a little while. This is awesome, and it should be on the radio. Put that out. It's awesome. Yeah.
What radio station would play that song?
It got some good airtime. Yeah. It's a good song.
Okay.
Hi, how are you? When you are writing a rap song, do you find that you start with a line and follow the pattern, like the rhyme scheme, or do you follow the content downward and then try to make adjustments to weave the patterns later?
I used to do the former, now I do the latter.
Okay, thank you.
I feel like we should say something about that, though, because that's not satisfying for anybody but us.
Okay.
So, do you come up with a line and try to syllable match? Da-da-da-da-da-da. Now the next line should be da-da-da-da-da-da, right? So do you try to come up with that way, or do you let the content determine it? I found that the lines that I was making the rhymes were too simple, but rhymes have gotten increased. What's the name of that formula, like how circuit boards, is it the Goldman's formula? Come on, somebody codes in here. What, excuse me?
I think it's Moore's Law, where it's
Yes.
storage. It's smaller.
I'm buying you a glass of wine. Moore's Law, that there's like a really predictable way, exponentially, that we can anticipate how much data can be stored on a circuit chip. Similarly, rhymes have become way more complicated, even in the past 10 or 15 years. Like what used to sound like a pattern or what used to make you a spitter would not get you through the door anymore, you know? So I think that if you're pattern driven only, you're likely to, it's too simple. You got to let content be the stochastic element in that like throws you for a rhyme you wouldn't have expected because you're content driven.
Absolutely. Thank you.
That was a great question.
All right, over here.
I feel like I'm cutting in line.
No. We got one more here, one more there, and
Fair.
maybe two.
I was just going to say, so I happen to work with youth, and I'm trying to find ways to empower youth through music in particular, and I'd like to know a little bit more about how you got into this from that way, because I find your music very empowering.
Thanks.
It tends to be something I use a lot.
I'm a little, I work with youth organizations sometimes, but to be frank with you, I usually have a lower age limit that's pretty high. So I've seen some people, some beatboxers in particular, they're like Pied Pipers with young kids. They're like Pied Pipers with old kids too. I mean, it's just the thing that they do is amazing because we all have the same instrument, and I don't know how you're doing that. And I've been talking right for my whole life. How are you making those noises? Like really good beatboxers? Because a lot of my stuff does reference drugs, depression, or sex. I don't usually work with teens unless they have had, like, if they're at a shelter, then I'm like, there's nothing that I'm going to teach these folks about that. Right? I mean, they know more about
Sometimes
that.
that's younger kids too.
They may well. So I'll try to figure out what the population is, meaning like, if a dad or a mom wants to bring an 11-year-old, I'm like, hey, for the record, I want this to be a safe, I don't like that term, to be frank. I want this to be a place where people can speak frankly about abortions, about domestic, blah, blah, blah. If your 11-year-old is in a place where that's appropriate for them because they're already living that, bring them in. But I think there's also just this idea of like, if anybody says like, I want to be a role model, you are excluded from potential role models. Nobody looks up to somebody because their mom said they should. So thank you for asking. And thanks for the work, legit. Thanks for the work you do.
Hi. I love seeing you perform. I think I've come to a bunch of your performances, but I wanted to ask, how did you talked about like how you got the songs into the orchestral version, but how did you pick which songs you were going to put on this album or change it all?
I learned that 2 days ago when I was listening to a podcast that Andy Thompson, the arranger, had done. I hadn't realized like how deftly he had steered me towards songs. And so I think I was gently hypnotized maybe by Andy, but I made a list of like the tunes I liked. Mm-hmm. I thought it would be cool if we could find some where the translation would be really different. So if you think of there's a song 5 out of 6, really electronic, kind of weird, kind of fast tempo, lots of polyrhythms, lots of dig, 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 digs in it. That would be cool and weird. But I also like these ideas of some that sounded a little bit orchestral in the beginning, like a song like Beekeeper, but where I had to be my own choir just by layering myself a bunch of times, right? I asked my friend Jesse Greene, who plays violin, could you just like multi-track? Could you layer you on top of you a million times? So it sounds like we have an orchestra. Those songs too were like, what if we really had an orchestra though?
Right. Yeah.
So it's kind of those two lines of thinking. Thanks for asking.
All right, let's do one more question and then one more song.
Sounds great.
Thanks, Dessa. As a fellow Minneapolitan, I'm wondering, I'm constantly reflecting on how my change in environment is changing kind of my perspective. Mm-hmm. How does moving to New York or splitting your time in New York change your perspective and the songs that you're writing?
Yeah, I would say that I think for my money that Minneapolis is this really, do you know what vermiculite is? I only knew that from my mom. You do? Okay, when you plant little plants like seedlings under grow lights, you don't put them in dirt. You put them in a thing called vermiculite, and it's kind of like Rice Krispies for plants. It's really light. And it's a great place to grow. For me, Minneapolis is just like, they're so down. They support the arts so much. Even just to say, like, if you were to meet somebody cute, at a bar or whatever, you might say, hey, let's go to the show tomorrow instead of let's go to a movie or let's grab dinner. Like, people put their pocketbook behind their commitment to the arts in this really built-in natural way. That said, I don't think we always do a great job of encouraging people to go big, And New York does that pretty good. And also, to be frank, like, This is a big yard. There's a lot of talent here, you know, and to figure out where I actually fit into the world, that's good. To like, people don't stand up for the ovation unless you earned it. And you know what I mean? There's no polite ovations here. So speaking of, let's do our last song. But before that, could you please help me thank John for being game to host the night? Thank you. When a woman performs her first orchestral show, the way that she dresses is important. And so for me, that meant having a custom Gothic sequined floor-length cape. Thank you. Shout out to Joy Noel, who is a designer from Minneapolis, Minnesota, for making this one. And it was even, she was so sweet. Even though, you know, the distance in that particular environment at Orchestra Hall in Minneapolis, the distance between the stage and the crowd is considerable because it's a big venue. But she included the detail of having the thing fasten with a skeleton key, which I thought was so rad. Aviva and Matthew, would you mind rejoining? I feel like a 3-year-old fastening in front of you, but there we go. For our last song, this one is called Fighting Fish, and I'd like to thank also Laserbeak and Paper Tiger for letting us like mess with their rap songs, right? Thanks again to the Argus Quartet. Let's do it. Swimming in a snifter, pretty as a picture. Don't get it twisted, man, her bite is a bitch. You can name, you can keep her, but take care when you feed her. You never can take the fight out the fish. Chopping at the drill bit, never want to still sit. You can test my metal with a magnet and some tin snips. Ink test, all I see is canines and some wingtips. Pilot, pen, and pocket, I'm riding instinct and inkjets. Around here we don't like talk of big dreams. To stand out is a pride and conceit. To aim high is to make waves, to split seams. That's not what it seems like to me, cause I wanna try, I wanna risk. I don't wanna walk, rather swing and miss. I'm not above apologies, but I don't ask permission. Got a lot of imperfections, but I don't keep my ambition in.
Never hits the mark, it's always hanging there over its shadow. Take from battle, waste of art, just time and trouble. Waste of effort, waste of parts. If you don't aim for the center, it's a waste of the art.
I didn't come looking for love. I didn't come to pick a fight. I didn't come to wave and take pictures. Painted as some benefactor, ring on every broken finger. Won't extend my wings to be clipped. I know the culture here is to stay humble, but shit, if we all go round bowed heads, button-lipped, if none of us go for the bell, then who is? My mother says I've loved too many men, but I took and left something in every single bed. The rook can look left, right, just turns his head, but the night might rise up, investigate the grid. Gender, genre, guess I'm on wet bent bone. Just the constructs of the old world gone broke. Women, children, let me tell you, I've been both. It's a myth, we all swim for the lifeboats. I didn't come looking for love. I didn't come to pick a fight. I come here every night to work. And you can grab an axe, man, and you can step aside.
Tino's there, never hits the mark, it's always hanging there over its shadow. Take the battle, waste of art, just time and trouble. Waste of effort, waste of parts. If you don't aim for the center, it's a waste of the art.
Self-taught, self-made, bitch, self-styled, self-saw, self-came, self-took island of converts. To conquer is old school, we marching in Converse, just armed with their own tools. While my knees still flex, while my voice holds steady. Mind sharp, spawn straight, chucks laced ready. I travel by kite, travel light at touchdown. I swallow the dice, I make my own love now.
Tino's arrow never hits the mark, it's always hanging there over its own shadow in the dark. Its own shadow in the dark.
Thank you so much.
Matthew Santos, Aviva J, the Argus Quartet, and of course, Dessa. Really? Did that not earn a standing ovation?
Not New York. I'll learn.
There is more Dessa online at newsounds.org. If you just search the name Dessa, you will find last week's show where we talked all about Sound the Bells, the new record with the Minnesota Orchestra, and a live set that she did in our studio back in 2013. So more Dessa at newsounds.org. Thank you all for being here tonight. Hope you had a great time. Dessa, thank you. Terrific set. Thank you all. Good night.